Okay, picture this. It's March 1998. You're on the Rhapsody of the Seas, sailing towards Curaçao. Think about the vibe music playing, that warm tropical air, everyone just relaxed. Total party atmosphere on the deck.
Yeah, which makes what happened next feel so jarring, like this impossible intrusion of, well, pure dread into that vacation scene.
Exactly, because suddenly this festive cruise becomes the setting for a mystery.
Right, and for 27 years, the disappearance of Amy Bradley, just 23 years old, was basically a cold case file, a maritime mystery kind of stuck in
Yeah.
suspended animation.
Until July 2025. That's when everything changed.
Boom. The Netflix docuseries Amy Bradley is Missing,
Yeah.
it just landed, and suddenly this decades-old case wasn't just a cold file anymore. It became like a global cultural event overnight.
And welcome, everyone, to Starscope Report.
This is where we dive into the stories, shaking things up, Hollywood drama, music industry chaos, and today, yeah, we're digging into this phenomenon, the Netflix effect.
So, our mission today is to look at the Amy Bradley case through this new lens. How did this huge surge of media attention suddenly flood the investigation with literally thousands of new leads? It breathed life back into the search.
But, and this is crucial, we also need to ask, did that very success, that streaming spotlight, actually end up amplifying the biggest, maybe the most dangerous narrative flaw in the whole case?
Let's start right at the beginning, the core problem.
Yeah, the foundational issue. The cruise line itself, they basically created this information vacuum. And that vacuum allowed a potential crime to go completely cold in, what, less than 2 hours.
It's unbelievable. Amy was, a recent college grad, smart, athletic, full basketball scholarship, degree in sports psychology. She had her whole future ahead.
Absolutely no reason to just vanish.
Right.
And the timeline is chillingly precise.
Last confirmed sighting, dancing with guys from the ship's band, including the bassist, Alistair Yellow Douglas. Then she used her key card, got back to her cabin around 3:4 in the morning.
Then, the critical moment, her dad, Ron Bradley, he sees her asleep, he thinks, out on their private balcony.
Yeah.
That's between like 5:40 and 5:30 a.m.
He drifts off for a bit himself, wakes up again around 6 a.m., maybe half an hour later.
And she's gone.
Just gone. Only things missing were her cigarettes and a lighter, everything else. Her sandals, her room key, her ID, all left behind in the cabin.
So the family realizes she's missing.
Yeah.
And they immediately tell the Royal Caribbean crew. They're pleading with them, don't dock yet, secure the ship. This could be a crime scene.
And what happens? They're basically dismissed, ignored. That's the part that just makes you furious. The cruise line cared more about sticking to its schedule in Curaçao.
Unbelievable. The official announcement, ship-wide, that a passenger was missing, that didn't go out until 7:50 a.m.
Nearly 2 full hours after the family first reported her gone. And by 7:50, the ship had docked, the gangway was down.
And most of the 2,000-plus passengers had already poured off the ship. They were streaming into Curaçao.
It's catastrophic for an investigation. You've just let your entire witness pool and potentially the person responsible just melt away into a crowd of tourists, disperse across the globe.
Yeah, someone analyzing the case called that 2-hour delay the original sin of the whole investigation. The crime scene wasn't secured, potential witnesses were gone.
All because the schedule came first. It's just, wow.
And that failure, that initial vacuum, it didn't just let maybe a perpetrator get away.
Yeah.
It created this space where fear and speculation could rush in.
Yeah.
And desperation.
Which, as we'll see, some people were more than ready to exploit.
Okay, so that's the initial scene, the critical failure. Coming up, we're going to look at the years that followed. The digital ghost photo that briefly convinced the FBI Amy was alive, and the absolutely cruel con artist who preyed on her family's hope.
Stick with us. We're diving back into the cold years right after this.
Welcome back. So the years after Amy vanished. It's fascinating and heartbreaking how the narrative quickly centered on human trafficking, even based on pretty ambiguous clues, really.
Right, like that sighting in 1998. A Canadian tourist, David Carmichael, he said he saw a woman on a beach in Curaçao who looked like Amy, even mentioned her specific tattoo, the Tasmanian devil one.
And she was with these two men, acting really aggressively towards her. He even thought one looked like that band member, Yellow.
Then, a year later, 1999, you get this claim from a U.S. Navy petty officer, William Hefner.
Yeah, Hefner said he was in a brothel, also in Curaçao, and a woman there told him her name was Amy and begged him for help.
But he didn't report it for years, and by the time he did, the brothel itself had burned down, so... Impossible to verify.
Exactly. These stories, they build this picture, this narrative of captivity, but you can't pin them down. They create the sort of emotional groundwork.
And then in 2005, that groundwork got a huge boost with the Jaws photo.
Ah, yes. These pictures, supposedly of a sex worker in the Caribbean named Jaws, were sent anonymously to the family's website. And the resemblance to Amy, it was uncanny.
So convincing, apparently, that an FBI forensic analyst looked at them and said the woman could very well be Amy. Some reports even say they called it a perfect match.
Which, I mean, that convinced the FBI, at least for a time, that she was likely alive and being held captive somewhere.
But hang on. A perfect match from grainy anonymous web photos back in 2005. Doesn't that sound, I don't know, maybe a bit desperate? Especially when the lead just evaporated.
Well, that's the thing. It was like chasing a digital ghost. The FBI couldn't trace the website's IP address, so they had this huge emotional breakthrough. She might be alive, but zero actionable intelligence. No way to follow up.
And that kind of situation, high emotion, desperate hope, but no concrete facts, that's like blood in the water for stammers.
Enter Frank Jones, 1999. This guy rolls up, claims he's some ex-Special Forces type, Green Beret, Navy SEAL, the whole 9 yards.
And he tells the Bradleys, I can find her. She's being held by heavily armed Colombian mercenaries, but I can get her back. I mean, it sounds like a bad movie plot.
He was incredibly manipulative.
Right.
He fed them bits of supposedly classified intelligence. He even somehow knew about a specific lullaby Amy's mother used to sing to her. Just sickeningly calculated to gain their trust.
And they were desperate. Of course they were. What else could they do?
So they paid him. Over several years, Jones conned the Bradley family and a nonprofit, helping them out of more than $210,000.
Just devastating, until he was finally caught and convicted of mail fraud in 2002.
And the key point here is, Jones didn't invent the trafficking story out of whole cloth. He just saw this existing narrative, fueled by those sightings and the Joe's photos, this powerful, emotional, but ultimately unprovable story.
And he monetized it, ruthlessly exploited their hope and the ambiguity of the situation.
Exactly. Which brings us forward decades later. Because a different kind of industry, the streaming giant Netflix, found its own way to capitalize on that same powerful, ambiguous narrative.
Yeah, but the way they chose to tell that story, the editorial decisions they made, that's become a really critical point now.
Definitely. And that's where we're going next. The Netflix effect, the explosive new leads it generated, like a suspicious IP hit near Barbados, and the truly jaw-dropping claim that Amy Bradley might have had a child. Stay with us.
Okay, we're back, diving into the aftermath of the Netflix series Amy Bradley is Missing. It dropped in July 2025, and the impact was immediate.
Oh, absolutely. The Netflix effect was real. Suddenly, thousands of new tips poured in from all over the world. It basically forced the FBI to formally reopen the case, assign a new dedicated agent. You can't deny that level of renewed attention is huge.
Huge, yes. But we need to look critically at the documentary itself. It wasn't just presenting facts. It was definitely making an argument.
It was a curated argument, as some critics pointed out, right? Heavily focused on the abduction and trafficking theory, which, okay, is a major part of this story.
Here's the massive omission. The documentary completely leaves out the entire Frank Jones scam.
And that's the core criticism right there. You can't tell the full story of the Amy Bradley case, especially the trafficking narrative, without including the fact that her family was defrauded out of over $200,000 by someone exploiting that very narrative.
By erasing Jones, Netflix essentially sanitized the trafficking theory, made it seem less complicated, less fraught with, well, with exploitation and false leads.
It arguably makes for a more compelling, streamlined story for viewers, maximizes that emotional investment, gets more people calling in tips about potential sightings.
But it's not the whole truth. It potentially shapes the kind of tips coming in, filtering them through this slightly skewed lens.
Despite that valid criticism, though, the series did reactivate the search in a big way. And now we're seeing these explosive new leads surface, often leaked to the media, things investigators are apparently looking into right now.
Okay, let's break them down. First, the bartender witness. This is new.
Totally new. A woman who worked as a bartender on the Rhapsody of the Seas back in 1998 has apparently come forward after 27 years.
And she claims that on the very night Amy disappeared, she heard someone shouting, "Señorita kidnapped! Señorita kidnapped!"
If that pans out, I mean, that's contemporaneous evidence of foul play right there on the ship the night it happened. Huge. But, obviously, needs heavy vetting after all this time.
Then there's the digital trail, the tech angle.
Right. Investigators apparently traced a, quote, highly suspicious IP address hit on the family's missing person website
Okay, where did it lead?
to a boat located off the west end of Barbados.
Wow. So connecting a digital clue directly to a physical location, and one in a region known for drug running and trafficking in the Eastern Caribbean, that's significant.
Very. And then there's maybe the most world-shifting lead, if it's true, the child theory.
What's the claim there?
The leak suggests there's compelling evidence, though we don't know what that is,
Mm-hmm.
suggesting Amy has had at least one child, likely born while she was potentially being forced into sex work.
Okay, wait, if that's true, if Amy Bradley has a child out there.
It changes everything. It definitively proves she didn't just fall overboard or die at sea back in '98.
It means she was alive for years, at least long enough to have a child. And it gives investigators a whole new, tangible goal. Find the child, and maybe you find Amy.
So you have these potentially game-changing leads floating around. We hear the FBI is taking it very seriously. Reports of agents, private investigators on the ground in Curaçao, Barbados, other places.
But officially, the FBI is saying almost nothing, just putting out the standard missing person poster, reminding people about the reward, up to $25,000.
Right. It's this interesting disconnect. Huge media buzz, explosive leaks, official silence.
Why do that? Why not engage more publicly if things are heating up?
It seems like a deliberate strategy. They avoid saying anything official that could compromise the actual investigation. Tip off suspects, reveal methods. But they, or sources close to them perhaps, seem to be using these leaks to the media. Keep the story alive, keep the pressure on internationally, maybe rattle someone who knows something. All without formally confirming anything, using the media buzz as a tool.
So the case is really balanced on a knife's edge right now. There's this real hope, fueled by the Netflix show and these new leads, that maybe finally there could be a breakthrough.
But there's also this huge risk, isn't there? The risk that the whole thing could just collapse under the weight of its own mythology. All the stories, the theories, the potentially misleading tips generated by a narrative that, as we discussed, wasn't entirely complete in the documentary.
It's incredibly complex emotionally, especially for the family. You hear them saying this attention feels like their last opportunity for answers.
Absolutely. But for investigators, it's this monumental task now. Sifting through thousands of tips, trying to separate genuine leads from noise, knowing that a lot of that noise might be shaped by the very documentary that generated the tips in the first place.
And when you strip it all back, all the theories, the scams, the documentary, the new leads, what really stands out, for me at least, is that the reason this mystery still exists goes back to day one.
Exactly. It all comes back to that initial catastrophic failure in March 1998.
This case, after all this time, it's still this powerful indictment of how the cruise industry, or at least how Royal Caribbean in this instance, handled safety and potential crime scenes back then.
That decision to prioritize the ship's schedule over securing the scene, over holding those potential witnesses, that is why we're still talking about this 27 years later. That 2-hour delay created the chaos, the vacuum that allowed this mystery to take root and endure for so long.
It's a story with so many layers. If you're finding these kinds of real-world mysteries and the way Hollywood intersects with them fascinating, make sure you're subscribed. We definitely have more stories like this coming up.
Yeah, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss what we dive into next.
You've been listening to Starscope Report, where Jordan and Jamie uncover the stories shaping Hollywood, music, and pop culture. Thanks for tuning in, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories that keep the stars shining.